Right. So, how, when, and how you got into aviation?
Well, it started. I can't tell you when, but it started a long time ago. Like, aviation was the only thing I wanted to do.
Right.
It wasn't a no-brainer. I didn't think about anything else. So, growing up, that's why I studied aviation. I went to the airport and I watched planes take off and land and stuff like that. I could tell you what plane was flying over and stuff like that. You know, in high school it was the same way, and I surrounded myself with people who had the same passion as I had. So all of us encouraged each other to do what we wanted to do. We went off to flight school at the same time and all that. So I think it was something that was meant to happen. Even if I couldn't do it, or if it was gonna be hard, I was still gonna do it. Because that's what I was doing.
Your mother was a flight attendant, right?
Yeah. My mother was a flight attendant. I have a godfather that's a pilot at Bahamian now. My uncle, he was a pilot at Bahamian. My godmother, she was a flight attendant at Bahamian. I have god sisters and god brothers whose fathers are pilot at Bahamian. So my best friend's father's a pilot. He was a pilot at Bahamian, and that's how we kind of got. He gave me my first drop flying.
Yeah, I worked there for a summer. With the Chieftain and the Seneca. The Seneca was actually the first plane I got to fly.
I flew the first plane I flew was in Nauru. I went to
I'll go down on just.
He let me take off. He didn't let me land. He kind of held it with me, so you know, just in case I did something stupid.
Right. Yeah.
But that was the first time I ever flew. The first time I ever sat in the cockpit, so you know, that kind of solidified it for me that I wanted to do it. Having the sights and the sounds and reading the instruments and stuff. And even before that, you know, all the years of doing flight simulators and stuff like that, it kind of prepared me for that day. So I had an idea of what was going on.
What were some of the difficult parts about your training and getting your type ratings and your licenses?
It's I think the most difficult part is having doubts and believing in yourself might be the most difficult thing, because you go through months and months of training and ground school and lessons, and I like to say everybody has good days and bad days. You never know when that bad day is going to come, so you kind of fear that, especially when it comes time to doing a check ride. A check ride for anyone is kind of scary. For me it was, and a 50-year-old captain is going to be, you know, still kind of a scary thing, because a check ride could determine your career. If you mess one up, I think they give you one chance and one other chance, and then if you can't do it, then you go home.
Right.
So besides the fear, I think it's the fear of failure. No pilot wants to fail, because that's at the end of the day you have 100 lives, 200 lives in the back of you, and if you fail, you're putting them at risk, not pushing yourself. So I think the fear of failure is one of the biggest things. I was never afraid of weather situations and stuff, or mechanical situations, because those are the things that you can control. You could, when something happens, that mental aspect kicks in, and you did it a million times already, so you know how to handle it. The thing that you can't control is your emotions as much. You can't control that fear or the apprehension. I think once you get that under control, then it makes life a lot easier.
Right. So, in terms of that, what advice would you give, say, someone who's coming up or wants to fly, or is in initial training, or you know?
Don't give up. don't let your failures slow you down, because in flight school, no one's gonna be perfect. You're gonna not get a steep turn right on the first try. You might not get it right on the second or third try, but you don't let those things discourage you. Just pick up and keep trying and keep practicing and do it over and over until you get it.
Right.
So, and stuff like that, like steep turns and stalls and those kind of things. It's not that we train people to do it. It's more like training you to recognize how to control the airplane, how to maintain altitude and how to roll out on it when you're supposed to and maintain airspeed and stuff like that. So when it comes to situations where we have to use that stuff, we have to know how to maintain altitude while keeping a constant airspeed and know how to do it.
Right.
So basically a steep turn is basically the most extreme situation you could be in, so anything less than that is completely manageable.
Oh yeah? Right. Who all of you work for, or only?
Performance Air was my first job.
Right.
I was an agent before I went to flight school, and then I came back and I flew around for a couple months, and then...
Oh, what aircraft?
I flew the Napo, the chief one.
Right.
About $500 or $600 in that. And then my next job was at Sky Bahamas flying the Saab. I think it was a good opportunity at Sky Bahamas because it wasn't a lot of us. There were 5 first officers, so we got the opportunity to move up the ranks a lot faster than you would think. Like the Bahamas say we have 100 first officers, or how many ever it is.
Right.
They don't have the opportunity to move up or to prove themselves to move up as fast as we could have because it was such a small crew.
Right.
So when I left, I was next in line to be captain. When I left Sky Bahamas, I was only there for 2 years, so that should show you the kind of movement that was going on.
So Sky Bahamas is a relatively small company.
Yeah, and it's small not because they don't want to grow. It's small because of the economy and because of the aviation industry in the Bahamas as a whole. Because you have Bahamas Air that they artificially lower their prices so no one can compete. That's the biggest problem. That's one of the biggest problems. Then you add on the cost of fuel, and you add on ad fees. They increase every year. You have every other fee that they have to pay, and it's hard to keep the fleet that they have, not to mention adding more planes and adding more routes.
Right.
But once things improve and once the aviation sector begins to grow again, then I imagine Sky Bahamas is going to be doing pretty good.
Alright. Okay. What are you up to now in your aviation career? Or where are you planning to go, or what goals?
Right now, I left the commercial, the kind of airline field to corporate aviation. And I started my own company. It's an Excell Jet Aviation. And I'm partnering with Global Aircraft Services. Together we are gonna kind of launch the first fully Bahamian owned kind of charter company on this big of a scale, because at this time there aren't any fully Bahamian owned charter companies that operate on this scale.
Right.
As far as having licenses to operate in the US and South America and any other country we want to operate in, we could do that. We have incorporated our company in the US, so we are a US incorporated company, which means we have a lot more resources available to us.
Right.
As far as discounts and insurance and stuff like that. And with that aircraft being US registered, the US registration is recognized all over the world. So we have a much bigger client base than we would have if our aircrafts were Bahamian registered, or if we just had a Bahamian operation. So the US operation in conjunction with our Bahamian operation is going to make us the biggest Bahamian privately owned charter operation in the Bahamas.
So, I guess the biggest question to most people would be, how did you and your team go about getting the resources together and
Well, I started planning. I wrote the business plan for Excell Jet in 2011 while I was still at Sky Bahamas. It took me a long time. It took me about 4 months to write the business plan. And after I wrote the business plan, I sat through it and I sat down with my partner and we discussed everything and we said, okay, this looks like it's a good idea. Let's see if we could develop it. So over the past 3.5 years, up to this point, we've been developing the business plan. We tweak it every now and then. It's not the same business plan as it was 3 years ago. It's completely different.
Right.
We made 6 revisions to it. So as the years go by and as the months go by and as we learn more, we incorporate this new information in our business plan to maximize the efficiency of the company. So as far as resources, that's the most difficult thing to get is people who are willing to invest in the company, because any startup company is going to be difficult to get capital for.
Right.
And in this country, it seems that people is afraid of the aviation industry. For some reason, it's not growing as fast as the U.S. aviation industry. People don't invest in aviation as much in the Bahamas as they do in any other country in the world. And for that reason, I don't know. But that's the most difficult thing, is to get the capital and to get started. Once you get that, then it's only a matter of time until you start operating. Because once you have the plan and you have experts in the field that you want to go in, and they say this plan is good, you can get started. Once you get that capital, you can almost get started right away.
What about in terms of the legal aspects and certification and
Well, Excell Jet, we're going through the process of receiving charter certification for the U.S. It's the 135 certificate.
Right.
We're gonna work on that first because it's a bigger client base. We can operate in the U.S. and still come to the Bahamas and pick up people and take them where they want to go in the U.S. But to get the Bahamian charter certificate, we're gonna leave that for last because it's a smaller base. It's not as much demand as it is in the U.S. So to start off in the U.S. is going to be beneficial for us because we can work and we can make money while we work on getting our Bahamian certification.
Right. Well, you said that aviation in the Bahamas isn't growing as fast as most people would think. How could it possibly grow faster in the future or expand?
Well, Bahamas Air right now is the biggest obstacle to that because when you have a government-owned operation that artificially lowers the price just to cover the competition and make some money, it's not going to work. It's never going to work for the smaller operators to expand. They can't do it because they have to basically compete against themselves. They have to pay all these fees and then they have to pay employees, and at the end of the day they don't have enough money to even think about trying to get more aircraft or expanding the different routes and stuff. So I think if Bahamas Air was to be privatized, that would take out a big monopoly. That would end the monopoly of Bahamas Air getting first preference when it comes to routes and artificially lowering the ticket prices, because any airline, even a flag carrier, their goal is to make money, to make profits. And Bahamas Air isn't making any money right now, and they're going to do anything they could to try and make some money. And they don't care about the smaller operators. They just want to say Bahamas Air is making money. So until Bahamas Air is privatized, or they change their policy around giving out flights or cutting out people, it's going to be difficult for anybody else to exceed what they're doing right now.
Right. Well, that's the commercial aspect. What about on general aviation, the general aviation side?
General aviation is doing a lot better than commercial airlines because it's not as regulated, and there's certainly a lot more competition with the operators of the general aviation side. But it isn't as bad. There are now people undercutting other people just to make some money. I believe the last time I checked, everyone was kind of around the same price. I mean, give or take $100 or so. There isn't that undercutting and, trying to put people out of business kind of thing going on. And the fascinating thing is, there is enough people in the Bahamas for everyone to make money in the aviation, transport people back and forth. There's certainly enough people in the Bahamas for that to happen. But for some reason, people seem to flock to Bahamas Air for some reason. Maybe because it's the flag carrier, but more probably because of the artificially low prices. And again, if you want to get to, say, Ultra, you could pay Bahamas Air $120. You're not gonna go to West Sudney or Pineapple and pay $150. Even though you get there faster, they're not as late as Bahamas Air is most of the time. And with that $120, Bahamas Air is charging no losing money. So, like I said, it doesn't really matter what Bahamas Air charges, because at the end of the day, the government is always gonna, give them out basically. And that's a big thing for other operators trying to, get out of the hole that they're in right now and try to make something of it.
Well, do you think, I guess a lot of people wonder, would Bahamas Air ever get privatized?
I think now more than ever, the country is in the state it is again. I think the government is looking for someone to make an offer to do it. I think if someone makes an offer to buy Bahamas Air, they're gonna jump right on it. But I think there hasn't been any offers to buy Bahamas Air because it isn't attractive right now, because Bahamas Air is so in debt, and people forget to realize that Bahamas Air, they don't pay customs. They have millions and millions and millions of dollars in customs fees that they haven't paid over the years. So if someone was to buy Bahamas Air, they're not going to take on the responsibility to pay all those fees that they were supposed to be paying all these years. So if Bahamas Air was going to sell Bahamas, if the government was going to sell Bahamas Air, I would imagine that they would have to forgive all these fees that they haven't paid all these years, and maybe that would be a little bit more attractive.
Right.
And right now, I don't know any possible candidates to buy Bahamas Air. There was a rumor that China was trying to buy Bahamas Air a couple of weeks ago, but that's just a rumor.
What aircraft would you like to fly?
Right now, I'm looking forward to flying the Hawker. It's gonna be my first jet flying on, and it's more or less an entry kind of jet for pilots, more or less. It's in the mid-size category, so I think it's a good jump from the Saab over to the Hawker. I could get any shift or any schedule I wanted because I was #1 on the list for the morning crew. So, and I preferred to fly in the morning because it was an easier break. Same thing seemed to go smooth in the morning because you could catch up. If something happens in the afternoon, it's harder to catch up because you have flights piled on. A 5:30 sign-in usually means flight to Freeport, and then Cat Island, probably Exoma after that. So once you sign in at OCC, and you get your flight plan and your release package, and that has the destination, the departure, the flight number, all the fuel that you're gonna need, the legs, and it has the flight plan at the bottom so you can calculate the fuel burn as you go along. And there's other information on it. And the next thing you do is you check the weather. We get daily. I think it's every 12 hours. The Met Office they send the area forecast.
Right.
And that goes in the package. That goes in every package. And every release has a separate weather package. So if you go to Freeport, come back to Nassau and go to Freeport again, you get a different weather package because the weather could have changed.
Right.
So you check the weather, make sure everything is legal. Check your note times. And then there's a maintenance log in OCC that you go and check to make sure that the aircraft you're flying has done the required inspections that it had to. It doesn't have any open MEIs, it doesn't have any items outstanding that they were supposed to do. And after everything is done, all the paperwork is done, the releases are signed and everything, you go to the airplane and you do your pre-flight. The first officer usually does the pre-flight, and the first flight of the day, pre-flight is the most intensive. You open up all the panels, you open all the doors, you check all the compartments, because you basically don't know what happened the night before. So you open up everything, you check the hydraulics, you go up in the wheel wells, everything. It's really intensive to make sure that the plane you have is airworthy. And certain first officers like myself, we were designated senior first officers. So we usually did the outside external inspection, and we did corporate preparation as well. That consists of testing the fire protection system, the storm protection system, icing the lights and all that stuff. Checking all your circuit breakers. If we have a GPU ground power unit, then we can do more tests than if we were just running on the battery.
Right.
So after all the internal tests are complete and everything is satisfactory and everything is airworthy, the logs look good, and everything is signed off by maintenance, then at that point we will call for the passengers or let operations know that we're ready for boarding. Then at that point our job is done until the passengers start the board. It's at the discretion of the pilot whether they want to start the right-hand engine while the passengers are boarding. We usually did that because those planes get really hot.
Yeah.
And the engine provides air conditioning for the cabin while the passengers are boarding, especially if you have a full flight. It gets hot really fast. It takes a long time for those airplanes to cool sufficiently on the ground, so we usually have those the right engine running for about 5 to 10 minutes before the passengers actually get on the plane.
Okay.
Once the door is closed and everyone's seated, we go through all the checklist. Checklist is a big thing in the airlines because you want to make sure that you did everything the right way. There's a tendency, once you do it for a long time, there's a tendency to memorize the checklist, and you really have to force yourself not to do that. Even though it comes natural after a while, you know everything on the checklist, so you're gonna do it without looking at the checklist. But one day you might get distracted, you might forget something. That's why the checklist is there, and that's why you have to make a concerted effort to always, even if you do it by memory, just to look at it. Look at the checklist just to make sure you didn't miss anything.
Right.
But it's always best to read off the checklist just to be sure that you're not going to forget anything, because it's not perfect and you're going to mess things up sometimes. So we go through our briefings. Depends on who's flying. Some captains like to do the first flight of the day. Some captains really don't mind. They like the first flight of the day. And whoever's flying does the briefing. And it basically consists of emergency actions, about the runway we're going to, what we're going to do after we take off. If we're flying IFR, the route. If we're flying VFR, that's basically what we're going to be going at and where we're going, basically. Takeoff, taxi and takeoff is standard procedure. Cruise, because we do such short legs, the cruise in the Saab is around 15 to 20 minutes for each flight. So we have a little time just to get our minds ready for the approach and the landing phase of the flight are the most, intensive parts as far as mentally. During the cruise, the flying pilot for IFR, we're going to look at the approach plates. We're going to brief everything so that we're both on the same page as to what approach we're going to do, how we're going to fly the approach, emergency procedures, missed approach procedures, and stuff like that. As well as when we land, it's important to state kind of which taxiway we're planning on turning off of, so you don't go in the wrong direction and have cause inconvenience for other airplanes in the area and embarrass yourself, because that's pretty embarrassing. To go down the wrong taxiway. And normally in the Bahamas we don't have much weather like that to contend with, so 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a VFR, visual approach. And we always back up, even if we do a visual approach, we back up our approaches with an instrument approach, if it's an ILS or a GPS or a VOL approach. That's what we do, just to add an extra level of safety and precision to the approach. And after we land, it's basically running the shutdown checklist and getting to the terminal and mentally preparing for the next event.
So what's the scariest thing that's ever happened on a flight?
Well, I've had engine failures, I've flown into thunderstorms. I think the most frightening thing that ever happened to me was one of the first times that I've flown to Fort Lauderdale with Sky Bahamas. There was massive thunderstorms all around. It was a bad day. And at that time, there was some kind of TFR over Miami or Dolphin, because I think President Obama or the Vice President was in Miami doing something. So we basically had to squeeze between a thunderstorm and a TFR. And the thunderstorm was moving closer and closer to the TFR.
What is a TFR?
Temporary flight restriction, where you're not allowed to go into that area for a certain amount of time, be it because of political activity going on or some special events. So they basically do it for special events that's going on, and they don't want the risk of airplanes flying through that area.
Right.
So there was a TFR over Miami. There was a massive thunderstorm over Fort Lauderdale that was moving closer to Miami, and air traffic control, they gave us a decision. We could either fly through the thunderstorm or we could fly through the TFR and have to fill out a lot of paperwork when we land. So you don't want to be in a situation like that where they make you choose whether you want to endanger the lives of your passengers, and risk losing the aircraft by going through a thunderstorm, or busting the TFR and having to fill out tons of paperwork and risk your license. So in that situation, we asked for the air traffic control manager's number, and it turns out we ended up squeezing through the TFR in the thunderstorm. It was a rough ride. We strapped in, we locked down our shoulder harness. Because it was really rough, we had to pull back the speed. We were going 190 knots. We usually cruise at around 230, 240.
Right.
190 knots is rough air penetration speed for the Saab. And even at 190 knots, going that slow, it was still really a rough ride. It was terrible.
Wow.
And then you have to contend with icing, lightning, and microbursts and stuff like that. So that was a bad situation, but we resolved it. When we got on the ground, we called the manager of Miami Center, who was on at the time. I'm not sure what happened, but they kind of rectified that problem. That shouldn't happen again. Where you basically have to choose between one room or the next.
Yeah.
Neither option is good.
Right.
So I think that was one of the most threatening situations I've been in.
So an engine failure wasn't even.
See, like I said before, you do it so much in the simulator that when it happens in real life. Actually, the first thought that went through my head, I was the flying pilot. You know, the captain said B1 rotate, and I started to rotate, and it happened right after rotation, so you can't stop.
Right.
Well, it happened right after B1, so you can't stop. And in the Saab, there's a bit of a delay because the prop, it doesn't, the auto parsing system, it doesn't spin the prop down like in an instant. It takes about a second or two. So after I rotated and the engine failed, the first thing that came to my mind is, well, I'm going anywhere. The plane isn't climbing, the airspeed isn't building, so the first thing in my head was, what's going on? I'm not going up, I'm not, gaining any airspeed. And then the alarm started kicking, and then we realized, oh, we lost an engine. So the captain, he was the pilot monitoring. He made all the calls, he did the drills, he let me fly, he let me land it, he let me fly the whole flight. It was 3 minutes in the air, I think. This was in Freeport. We basically did a basic travel pattern, and we landed back in Freeport with no incident. No one was hurt or anything. And it was, I wouldn't say it was my first engine failure on the Saab. So it was exciting, but it wasn't scary for me because I know what I was doing. The level of training we got was so good that even though we were surprised that the engine failed, we knew exactly what to do in order to, keep the airplane flying, and get back on the ground.
Good. Yeah, training is important. Training is important.
Actually, I take that back. The most interesting thing that happened to me at Sky Bahamas was the most technical failure that we've had, and I was told that this failure was so rare that they don't even train it in the sim, and even if they do, no one knows what to do because it doesn't happen. We had a generator failure, a left generator failure, which somehow shorted out the right battery, and somehow the bus tie failed. So the bus tie, what it does is it connects the two systems, and whenever you lose power on one side, the bus tie is supposed to open, so the power from the right side is kind of shared to the left side, but that didn't happen. And there wasn't any indication to say that the bus tie failed. What we had was a left generator failure, a left battery failure, and from that, the whole left side of the system went completely offline. We had no instruments, we had no hydraulics, we had no pressurization, we had no radio, we had no transponder, no T-gas, we had barely anything because a lot of the systems on the Saab is powered by the left side of the system, the left generator and the left battery. And we were going to Freeport, we were at 10,000 feet, about to level off, and all the screens, they started to flicker, but that didn't bother us so much because it's kind of a Saab thing, the screens are going to flicker every now and then. And so I was flying, so I said, let's go back to Nassau. I made the call, let's go back to Nassau. The captain said, okay. We told Miami, we were talking to Miami at the time that we were going to go back to Nassau. But we didn't declare emergency at that point because we thought it was a simple screen failure. We just thought, two of the screens went out. It wasn't until that we started losing pressurization and we started losing communication and all these other things started happening that we realized that we had a bigger problem. And we couldn't talk to the flight attendant because the PA system was called by the left side of the system. So she had no idea what was going on. And there was no time for us to kind of open the door and call it in the cockpit and let her know what was going on. It happened that fast. We were high on approach. We were I think it was about 5,000 feet, about 5 miles. We were really high, so I was trying to get down. We were doing S-turns. We flew a normal approach, flaps, 15. But when I called for gear down, I put the handle down, and I I said to myself, well, something isn't right. Like, we didn't hear the hydraulic pump kick in. Without the hydraulic pump, the gear wasn't going to go down. So we had to cancel the approach. We got missed. At that point, the captain had to take over because the emergency extension lever is on my side, on the first officer side. So we opened it up. I opened up the panel and I got the big bar from behind the seat to start trying to pump the gear down. And the captain made a decision, just to blow the extension. That's on Saab. The landing gear, the up blocks are kind of held in place with kind of bolts that have a charge on it, an explosive charge. When you pull the handle, it lowers the charge and the gear drops by gravity. So we said, pull the handle, pulled it, and we blew bolts and the gear dropped. And I kind of reminded him that we're not going to have any flaps, we're not going to have any steering, when we slow down, we're not going to have any brakes. So we had to do a fast landing. And with that, it was kind of tricky because even though we had to do a fast landing because we didn't have flaps, we didn't have brakes either. So we had to rely on reverse to kind of bring the plane to a slow enough to use the little bit of hydraulic pressure that we had to get the plane to stop. We didn't have any nose wheel steering. And he elected not to use the nose wheel steering because that would deplete the little hydraulic pressure we had left, and we wanted to use that for the brakes to stop the airplane. We didn't have any communication at all. On the left side, COM 1 was dead. In COM 2, the transfer function wouldn't work, so we couldn't change frequencies on COM 2. So COM 2 is usually on the company frequency. And we were talking to another flight that was in the air at the same time, and they were relaying to ATC our predicament. They declared an emergency for us. No, they were letting ATC know where we were and what we were going to be doing. At the same time, operations could hear our conversation, and they were putting things in place. They were getting maintenance ready to come out to the runway to meet the plane. They were getting emergency. They have an emergency plan book or handbook, and they put that in motion, just in case something bad would have happened. But it turned out alright. I think the only thing that was hurt that day was the airplane, and a couple of people, got shaken up emotionally. But other than that, it was good.
Alright. Wow.
And the thing is, they put us in the next plane and 30 minutes later and say goodbye.
Money has to make. Money has to make. Well, last question. When could we look to see Excell Jet off the ground and operating?
Next month is going to be next month in April. We're looking at our first flight. We're gonna do the training next month. March 10th is when we're scheduled to go. We have all the pilots in place. We have everything ready to go. We have flight attendants. We have operations staff. We have everything ready to go to begin operating in the beginning of April.